Hello everyone, my name is Jalal and I'm going to present my TERN project. The TERN project that we did for this semester, it's very simple. Basically you have addresses that you can input via a CSV file. Once you have these addresses via CSV file, you will need you need to take these addresses, validate the addresses via an API. In my case, I'm using USPS API, and once you validate the address, you go and you get the career route using the USPS API. I'm going to show you here. So this is my input file. It's a simple file. It just has the street number, street name, apartment number. Apartment number is optional, and city, state, and zip code. You can see here we have this apartment number, and this doesn't have it because it's optional. These are just sample random addresses that I just picked up from Zillow. You can enter any addresses you would like. So let's run the service and see what does it do. It's just a simple Java Spring Boot project. We're just waiting. Looks like I have the port used. Looks like I had the port already used. Let me run it again. Alright, you can see that the project is running, or the application is running. Once the application is running, I just have it running on localhost. So once the application is running, you can run the report, and this report basically what will do, it will take these addresses that we have in here as we explained earlier, and it will validate the address, then read the career route, and then generate some output files. So you see once we click on this, you can see that the application in the background, it's going and validating the address and getting the result from the address. This is basically the GUI or the UI for the application, and you can see that we have here basically two form of presentation. We have a table and we have a graph here. So this is the table, which is basically the first report. It shows the validated address and the career route. We can look a little bit more. I can present like 10 of them, for example. You can see here all the addresses and the corresponding career route. In the second one, basically, or the second the graph you see in here is the number of addresses per route. So this is one route, this is another route, and this is the occurrences of this address. So how many addresses belong to this route. Like for example, if we look at this route here, which is C090, has 4 addresses. So if we go to the table here, you can see here is 1, here is 2, here is 3, and here is 4. And if you go right here, you can see this R015 has 2. So let's find them. So this is the first one, and this is the second one. On C024, 1 address. You can go to C024, 1 address. So basically, this is the output or the GUI for the UI for the application. It presents 2 reports, one in form of table, which is addresses and their corresponding career route. The second one is a graph. It shows the number of addresses per route. Like you can see here. So there is 4 addresses in here. This is the number of addresses. So the x-axis in here is the route. The y-axis is the occurrences. Like for example, 4 here and 2 here and 1 here. So now let's go to the overall design. So this is just the report. I'm going to show the overall design. So this is pretty much the overall design. What I have a view, which basically you saw in here. So this is basically the view. And the view will communicate with a controller. The controller will communicate with the controller, and the controller will direct traffic to the facade. What this facade does is basically will communicate with the USPS, with the two API of USPS, which is validate the address validator, which is USPS API, and also I will communicate with get the career route, which is another API. And basically every time the address get updated, or we corrected some items in the address will be updated in this object. And this is pretty much the design for this application. The three design pattern I used was the first one is the facade pattern. The facade pattern. The reason we use the facade pattern because we want to hide the complexity of communicating with the USPS and all these APIs. We're gonna hide all of that behind the facade. So the controller will only have one point of communication. Will communicate with the facade, and the facade basically will take it from there and do the rest. So basically, it's hide the complexity. So the facade here will basically go get the career, go validate the address, and then return the validated address, or after that we'll go and communicate with the career route. So all this complexity of communicating with the outside system is hidden behind the facade. The second one, which is the singleton pattern. The reason we use singleton pattern because we are working with an object, which is the address. So once you load that address, we would like to work with that item, and we would like, if there is any correction or updates, we will do it to that object. And we do not want to create copies and copies and copies of that item. We want to work with that object, single item. We want to make sure that we are updating the correct address, and we're working with that single object at the time. The third design pattern is the observer pattern, and the reason we use the observer pattern is we would like to update every time we find that an address needs to be validated or cleansed. Or cleansed basically is we would like the observer pattern will do that job. Basically update the address, be like, hey, we found some misinformation here, we would like you to update it. And the observer pattern will handle that. It was just a perfect pattern for what we'd like to do is validate the pattern and then make sure that the pattern is validated. These are basically the three design pattern that we use. This is just the entire class diagram. Now let's see, if we look back at the code, the code is pretty simple. So let's start with the UI. So this is the UI as you see. So the first one is basically just a table. Table has address and career route. So if you look right here, this is just the table has the address and the career route. That's pretty much what this portion is, and it just basically get updated. The second one is just a JavaScript also that get injected into the HTML. And what it is, it's basically just reads the data and present it in terms of a graph. So this is the number of addresses per route, and this is the total addresses. So the first entry after the UI is going to be the controller. So what the controller does in here is basically called the facade. That's pretty much what it does, because all that complexity is hidden behind the facade. So now we are in the facade, and you can see that the facade implemented updates the address, so it gets notified once the address get updated. So what happening here is we have an address validator, so to validate the addresses. So if you look right here, you can see, so let's go to the addresses validator. So basically what we do is this is the API, or this is the USPS API, and you just send the address, and they respond back with the correct address for the information you sent. And this is what validates our address. So this is the address validator. Once you get the address validator, you go get the career route, and again, it's another API. You fill in the information for the API. It's just a REST call, and you fill in basically the validated address in the REST call, and you create the connection, and you get the career route. You get the response for that corresponding address. Once you do that, you basically update. You use the observer pattern to update and communicate and notify the the object that they got updated. And the singleton pattern here that we have is the address object, and you can see here that the address object has a private constructor and has a get instance object that in case the instance is null, you return the address. In case the address exists, you return the address. And then the view basically that we talked about. So after the data get formed, we get the view back from here. And this is basically once we get the address. So let's go back to the facade here. Once you get the facade, you get the address, and then basically we have to write the report back at terminal files. So the first report is basically this is just we're writing the report to the file, because we write the report to the file and we also present it as a GUI. The first report, you just basically write that data into a file called the list of addresses in career route, and as an Excel file. And the second report is a list of addresses per career route. So the second addresses. This file get exported right here. So you can see the first file over here. Let's open it. So you can see this address. So these are the cleanse address or the clean address, and this is the corresponding route, which is a form of a CVS file. And the second report is the list of addresses per route. So if you expanded this, you can see this is the career route, this is the count. This is the C090, they have 4. We talked, this is R015, has 2. And this is basically just the career route with how many occurrences or how many addresses belong to that career route. Obviously it get exported as a file, and also it get injected back to the HTML view, what you can see in here, and also it looks when you read it on the browser, something similar to here. And this all what's to this project, this application, the route mining. Thank you.